Good afternoon. I am really delighted to share with you this presentation about para report cards on physical activity in children and adolescents with disability in honor of Professor Claudine Sherrill, who was a great leader and mentor. I personally learned so much from this person. I would also like to address my gratitude to leaders and teams of the para report card providers and specialists of the Health Behavioral School for Children survey, which has been done in the countries which provided the report cards, and what these report cards are, I will explain in this presentation. So, just a minute. The outline of this presentation will be as follows. We will start with some information about physical inactivity among children and adolescents with and without disabilities. Then there will be an overview of the action, which is called para report cards, the development of this action, and I will summarize some data-based findings and content-related synthesis of what we have called the SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths on the International Physical Activity Framework, which has been developed for children and adolescents with disabilities, present some examples of good practice for active play and fitness assessment in children and adolescents with disability, and finally, discuss conclusions and take-home messages. So first, if you are looking on the left side of this table, you can see the important health benefits of physical activity for children. It's not only the muscular fitness, the heart and lung health, it's also the academic performance based on the brain health. In the last 10 years, we have learned so much about the importance of physical activity for the brain, for the cognitive functions. And of course, it is also important for maintaining a lifelong good health, healthy weight, including cardiorespiratory health and bone strength. On the right side, you can see outcomes for a recent presentations, which suggests that during the recent 20 years, the degree of inactivity among adolescents has increased. If we look at these columns of the Middle East, where you and I are, Turkey and Israel, we can see that at the beginning of the century, we were around 80% of inactive children. Now we are 90% inactive children. What does it mean inactive? It means they don't attend at least 60 minutes of physical activity a day, which are the recommendations of the WHO, of the World Organization for Health. Now here you can see some results from earlier findings on the left and more recent findings on the right, which suggest the same, that as the age is getting older, the amount of those who are sufficiently active is declining. So those who are older, let's say 12th grade, they do less physical activity. Only 2 to 3% are doing physical activity, and those with disability are doing less. So this is very important to understand. And if we follow, we can see another very important article in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, the World Health Organization 2020 guidelines on physical activity and sedentary behavior. And if we're looking at the guidelines regarding children and adults with disability, we see recommendations that physical activity is critical for cognitive outcomes, as well as for health-related quality of life and psychosocial behavior. So these are very important to understand that we're not talking only about the body, it's also about the cognitive function and the social function. So we understand that this is so important, and we would like to know which are the support systems that could be helpful to develop physical activity among children with and without adolescents, with disabilities. So we can see here that first of all, the family and the school connectedness are considered very, very important protective factors, so factors supporting physical activity participation. The peers and the families, also in more recent study, also were found as very important protective factors against victimization and bullying, some social behavior from which children and adolescents with disability are getting hurt. And finally, as we already said, we see that physical activity is positively associated with school performance. However, we can see that data suggests that children and adolescents with disability have higher rates of health risk disorders. They have higher incidence of risk-taking, disruptive, and delinquent behaviors, delinquency. Also, they experience less protective factors, which means less family support, teacher support, particularly teacher support, compared to peers without disabilities of the similar age. So the questions are whether there is enough physical activity and what can be done to increase the amount of physical activity among children and adolescents with disability. So the report cards on physical activity on children, and particularly the power report cards on physical activity of children and adolescents with disability, are a very important asset in this regard. In 2005, it originated in Canada and later on went further to all over the world, the Active Healthy Kids Global Alliance. This alliance has been designed to serve as a knowledge translation tool and to accelerate the dissemination of physical activity research and evidence-based practice around the world. And we can see that it has increased from Ottawa, Canada, to all over the world, as you can see here. And if in 2014 there were only 15 countries involved in the global matrix for general children and adolescents, not only those with disability, particularly the general population. In 2016, we had already 38 countries, in 2018, 49 countries. Most recently, the launch of the Global Matrix 4 was in Abu Dhabi, in October 2022 with 57 countries. And for the first time, there was the launch of the PRC, the Para Report Cards, where we recruited 14 countries. And you can see here the countries which were recruited: Canada, United States, Brazil, Chile, Finland, Hong Kong, Ireland, Israel, the Philippines, France, Spain, South Korea, Poland, and Lithuania. And so these countries have been able to utilize different data sources. And you can see here on the screen, on the left side, the type of the data sources: disability-specific physical activity surveys, general education reports, governments or policy reports, etc., etc. And we can see on the other columns in different parts of the world: Asia, Europe, Middle East, and the countries which were utilizing the different types of surveys. Now, here we can see how these report cards were structured. They have 10 indicators: overall physical activity, organized sport, active play, active transport, sedentary behavior, physical fitness, and then the support system: family and peers, schools, community, and government. On the left side, we see the grading. A+ is the highest grade, which is equal to the score of 15, and the lowest grade is F for fail, which is equal for a score of 2. And there is also the option of inconclusive, not enough data to provide a grade. So we can see here the profile of the highest grading for the indicators of the Para report cards. And particularly, it is important to see that in physical fitness, we only had one country, Korea, reporting. And in active play, we had the highest score of Israel. And therefore, I will report a little bit more how we try to develop active play among children and adolescents with disabilities in this country. So here you can see again the global view with the different countries reporting, the number of indicators, and the final grade in each of these countries who reported to the report cards. And here you can see the papers which were published very recently in December 22. And these are expected to be published in issue 3 of volume 40 of Adapted Physical Activity Quarterly, but they are already ahead of print online on the Human Kinetics APEC website. Now, if we look into another study which compared the overall grades of Para report cards with the grades of the general report cards, we can see, for example, here in part of one of the tables in this study, that in all the indicators of overall physical activity, organized sport, active play, active transportation, sedentary behavior, the grades of those with disability, yes, compared to those with no disability, the grades were less. The average grade of all 14 countries were always less in those with disabilities compared to those in the general population. So children with disability lack, compared to children without disability, on participation in physical activity, fitness, play. And this is a big problem because this is so important for their function, as we have seen from the World Health Organization recommendations. And another thing we did was to chart the indicators across components of the ICF. The ICF is the International Classification of Function and Disability, which refers to body function and structures like strength, endurance, bone density, respiration, and refers to activity and participation, such as skills, motor skills, and specific skills for playing different sport games, and the environmental contextual factors, which are the school, the community, the government, and so on. So we charted the information that was provided in the 14 report cards against these components of the ICF and analyzed them qualitatively. It was a qualitative thematic analysis. And we can see, for example, that regarding body function and structure, we had no strengths. We tried to analyze those in terms of a SWOT analysis, which are the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. So we see that body function and structure, no strengths, no opportunities. We were talking about weaknesses, lacking data about physical fitness of children and adolescents with disability. In those cases, we had some data. We found that the measurement, the assessment methods were not practical, were not useful. We also found that there was an ableist language which did not regard the specific capabilities of those with disabilities. For example, if a teacher tells his class, please run 3 laps around the schoolyard, a child with a motor disability might not be able to run. He might need a wheelchair to move around the schoolyard. So this is ableist language. We referred to activity and participation, and we saw that there were in some countries strengths, in some countries there were weaknesses regarding the same thematic analysis outcomes. So, for example, in sport programs, some countries reported they were strong, others thought that they still have some weaknesses. Also, the same for equipment, for organized sport, and for professional development. So here, as I said, I will refer specifically to the issue of active play with the example of my country, Israel, which was relatively strong. So on this table, you can see different programs which are available. These are about 10 programs in different activities, particularly soccer, football, and basketball. The kind of inclusion, is there an inclusion with non-disabled or no inclusion with non-disabled? The age, the kind of disability, the level of disability, and the location. So we see that there is quite an amount of programs. I will focus on one specific program of the Israel Sports Center for the Disabled, which is located in the middle of the country in a city called Ramat Gan. And here on the right side, you see Mr. Boaz Kramer, who is the CEO of this center. and brings the center to high excellency. Now, what is the Children and Adolescent Program of the Israel Sports Center for the Disabled? It includes regular sport activities like swimming. It includes specialized sport activities like goalball, and some integrated sport activities such as running and cycling, such as participating in wheelchair basketball. And this we call reversed integration approach, where children with disability, such as this child, together with a child without a disability, with no disability, sit in a wheelchair, each of them sits in a wheelchair, and they play together at the same team and share the spirit of the game. In this program, we focus on motor limitations. There are nearly 200 participants every year, and the activities, they range from rehabilitation activities to sports-focused activities. One of the important aspects of this program is the evaluation and monitoring reports. We use a number of reports all the time when the children are taking place in the activity. And as they come into the center for the first time, we monitor the functioning skills and abilities. Then we plan the future activities, recognize the similarities and differences in performance compared to other children, and use the basic report as a basis for the progress evaluations. All the reports have the same structure. However, in each sport, there is a specific report, and all of them are in the process of validation. Here you can see an example of one report. And here you can see the personal details of this individual, the name, and the activities in which this child takes place, age, the diagnosis, the profile of mobility, the profile of communication, and the functional goals. What do we want to achieve with this child? An ability to work independently in the community, and an ability to integrate with other children his age and participate in team activities. So it's both functional and social goals. We use the same for most activities. We use the same structure or index of the report. It's a scale of 3 points. Highest is 3 points and lowest is 1 point. And 3 points means that the child is able to perform the whole task as requested independently without any help of an instructor or some assistive devices. 2 points means that the child is able to perform the task partially, independently without help or assisted devices, but only part of the task. And 1 point means that the child needs full assistance for performing the task. Here you can see some examples of this kind of reports that we are using during the period of participation of the child in the activity. For example, for soccer or football, we see the different tasks, such as controlling the ball and progressing in a straight line. We can see it was 2. Controlling the ball while changing direction, the score was a little bit less. So we can see that this scoring is very important, and it provides a total score. Here, in this case, 46%, which means the a total amount of all the specific tasks. Here we can see another child who participates in basketball, and you can see that the different tasks, controlling the wheelchair, controlling the ball in static position, controlling the ball while in the move in a wheelchair, in all these activities is scored the highest possibility. And in total, this child had 92% of what is possible to achieve. So he was already in a high level, and this level means that such a child can already be moved to league teams, meaning that he can participate in wheelchair basketball games together with older players. And in our country, since more than 15 years, we have this program. We were able to develop a very successful young team who scored very high in the recent European games for, it was, I think, under 21 in wheelchair basketball. So we can see that we look into two factors. First, the skill level, and the next one is the ability to be independent. These axes are very important for us when we score the performance of the children. And here we can see how this changes across the years from 2016 to 2018. Here we have the different tasks, in this case, in soccer, football, and we can see that in 2018, already in many tasks, the child scored the highest possible outcome. Here we have a similar chart about the changes of scoring from 2016 to 2018 in wheelchair basketball, and we see that more tasks were scored highest. So, in addition to the skill-related assessment, we also use an assessment of a social behavioral index, and this assessment refers to whether a child listens to the instructor during the activity, whether he or she are able to control their feeling and behavior, whether they can successfully establish social contacts and communication, and whether they are motivated. So again, a scale of 3 in 4 items, which together, averaged together, we can see the advance of one particular child across different years. So in total, we can see that using individual activities and group activities, we are able to promote different aspects of the child's life, such as dynamic stability, spatial awareness, cardiovascular endurance, social skills, lower body strengthening, and upper body strengthening. Another thing that we are now looking to improve is the physical fitness. We said in the report cards that a part of South Korea, no other country was able to provide data about the fitness of the children and adolescents with disabilities. In fact, there are some tools such as the Brockford fitness test or the Eurofit Special. And here we can see, for example, the Eurofit Special for children and adolescents with cognitive disabilities. And here we can see the utilization of the Brockford physical fitness test, which was done about 10 years ago in Turkey with my colleague Dilara Ozer and some other colleagues which supported this interesting project on integrated participation of children and adolescents with and without cognitive disabilities in a soccer program. And here is the data which was reported in this study. Finally, I would like to attract your attention to an important issue that we found in our SWOT analysis, which is the inspiration and legacy. So we found that increasing awareness to the benefits of physical activity participation is very important, and there are two modalities. First is to use inspirational speaker, mostly adolescents and adults with a disability who are role models for other children and adolescents, and the Paralympic Sports Day, which are workshops which can be run in schools, and also utilization of the reverse integration project, which I explained to you before. And we have several presentations and articles which were published about this issue. So for the conclusions and take-home messages, very important to monitor individual performance development across the process of development of a child in a physical activity program. Very important to find appropriate, user-friendly, valid fitness surveillance tools, and very important to find modalities which could address the legacy and inspiration for the participation in physical activity, such as representative athletes with disabilities. And with this, I would like to